Jake was the king of all of his room, and he ruled from the warm, soft blanket at the foot of his bed. He was the king of his closet, king of his chair, and the king of the socks on his floor. He was even king to his cat, Fred. On the first day of school, Jake paced nervously back and forth in his room and said, "I wonder what today will be like for a king like me." He chose his best pants and a bright-colored shirt. He adjusted the cardboard crown on his head and tied a cape around his neck. He looked in the mirror and said to his cat, "I look mighty fine. What a good king I am, Fred." He darted down the stairs and ate his favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with strawberry sauce. It was a meal fit for a king. He finished every last bite. After hugging his mother, he ran outside where a fancy yellow carriage would take him to school. And he waited. And waited. And waited. From the end of the road, he heard a snort, a growl, a cough, and a hiss. A yellow school bus bounced down the street and stopped in front of his house. The doors flung open, and a portly old man belched out, "All aboard!" Jake scampered up the stairs onto the bus. The seats on the noisy bus were filled with kings and queens from other kingdoms. Jake dodged a paper airplane that barely missed poking out his eye. In the first seat, a talkative little girl giggled and turned away. When Jake tried to sit down in the second seat, a little boy with red curly hair growled at him. In the third were two brothers that lived on a street. Neither of them said hello. In the fourth sat two girls whose names were both Kim. Kim number 1 stuck out her tongue, and Kim number 2 rolled her eyes as Jake walked past her. The fifth seat was broken and covered in old chewing gum. Jake took one look and left it alone. The sixth seat was empty and quiet. Jake sat there. As he sat, Jake wondered if maybe he wasn't so special. "Your shoes look funny," said Kim number 2. "Why are you wearing a cape?" the plump boy said. "What's that on your head?" one of the brothers asked. Jake looked down and stared at his shoes. He took the crown off his head. "Maybe my shoes are funny," he thought. All of a sudden, a furry troll the size of a baseball appeared on his shoulder. Floppy ears hung down around his hunched shoulders, covering the grotesque black dots that sprinkled his face like pepper. Long, twisty horns shot from his head, and his nose was covered in slime. Jake jumped when he saw it and fell out of his seat. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" a little girl asked. "Are you some kind of weirdo?" Jake climbed back in his seat and hoped that nobody saw the purple monster perched like a stork on top of his head. "I'm not a weirdo," he whispered to himself, but he wasn't sure he believed it. The troll burped and grew 6 inches taller. When he walked into school, a stern woman shouted, "Capes are not allowed!" Fighting back tears, Jake untied the knot and stuffed the cape into his backpack. Maybe kings just aren't special here, he thought. The hairy monster jumped from his head and down onto his shoulder. The troll looked a bit bigger. He snarled at Jake and bounced up and down on his shoulder, causing Jake to stumble. Jake hoped that no one would see him. At lunchtime, Jake dropped his milk on the floor and everyone laughed. The snaggletooth troll rolled on his shoulder, hissing in Jake's ear. It was hard for Jake to balance his tray with the hideous creature on his shoulder growing larger and larger. He tried to hide it away in his backpack, but the foul monster was too big. He tried to run away, but the fiend wouldn't turn loose. Jake even tried to give it away, but he found no one to take it. And no matter how much he tried to ignore it, the ugly troll couldn't be ignored. All day long, it grew and grew. The troll was so big now that it clung to his shoulders. Jake couldn't even put on his backpack, and when school was over, he missed the bus. Jake wiped away a tear as the bus drove away. The troll giggled as Jake walked home slowly, dragging his backpack behind. At home, Jake shuffled up the stairs and went straight to his room so that no one would see him or ask him about his day. He tossed his backpack onto the floor of his room and shook the troll off his back. Jake put him into his closet, closed the door, and forced a chair up under the handle like he had seen on TV. His cat Fred stared at him from the foot of the bed, and Jake slumped down on the floor. "I wasn't a very good king today, Fred," Jake said. All of a sudden, a loud crash came from inside the closet. The door burst open, and a giant foot popped out. Sludge dripped from the matted hair surrounding blistering warts, and yellowing toenails curled around the edges of short, chubby toes. The more Jake thought about his terrible day, the larger the ogre got. The foot kept growing. A knobby knee followed it, and soon the horrible creature broke through the wall. The troll was enormous and filled up the room. His hunchback touched the ceiling, and his floppy ears scraped the walls. Fred hissed. He arched his back, and his orange fur stood straight up, and then he darted under the bed. Jake scrambled away, but the monster kept getting bigger. The troll crushed the chair in front of the door and then stomped his way over to the bed, taking hold of Jake's beloved blanket. He sat down with a thud and broke the bed in two. Fred jumped away just in time. The giant took a bite out of the pillows that had fallen on the floor. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Fred. The troll smiled an ominous grin, revealing drool that dripped from his sharp teeth as he pulled down the curtains to use as a napkin. Cowering in the corner, Jake looked at his kingdom broken and smashed, not fit for the king he was this morning. Now the troll was the king of all in the room, and he ruled from the warm, soft blanket at the foot of his bed. He was now king of the closet, and king of the chair, and even king of the socks on the floor. The hungry giant's stomach gurgled. He lunged at Fred and snatched him by the tail. The troll lifted the cat up in the air and dangled him over his mouth. Just as he was about to drop him down his gaping throat, Jake shouted, "No!" "No!" Jake shouted again. "This isn't your room!" The troll looked confused and tilted his head. He then roared a thundering laugh as he pointed at the boy hiding in the corner. Jake pulled out his cape and picked up his crown. "Laugh all you want, silly old troll. I've had enough of you." Jake stood up and emerged from the corner. He walked right up to the towering ogre who leaned down to mock him. Jake poked the troll right on his slimy nose. "This isn't your bed, and it isn't your chair, and those aren't your socks on the floor." The troll burped and shrank down to half his size. Jake charged for his blanket, but the troll lunged at him, and Jake flopped to the floor. His crown tumbled to the ground. Determined, Jake dusted himself off and placed the crown back on his head. He ran toward the troll and rescued the blanket from his broken bed. "My shoes may look funny, but what's that to you? I am King Jake, and this is my room, so put down my cat and get off my bed. I like who I am. Who cares what those kids said? I am who I am, and that's the king of my head." The troll burped again and shrank down smaller than a teddy bear. As Fred fell from the monster's clutches, the troll burped and shrank until finally there was nothing left but a tiny purple dot the size of a fly. Jake smashed it and threw the troll away. Jake surveyed his room. The chair wasn't broken, and the closet was no longer ruined. He climbed up on the warm, soft blanket at the foot of the bed. "There," he said to his cat, "what a good king I am." Jake's mom walked inside and patted him on the head. "How was school today?" she asked. And Jake said, "Just fine."